Commander Jake Morrison stared at the massive alien structure floating in space before his ship. The U's horizon had traveled for months to reach this meeting point near Proxima Centauri, and now he faced something beyond human imagination. The Galactic Council station stretched for kilometers in every direction with towers that twisted like metal trees, and rings that spun slowly around a central core that pulsed with blue light. Dr. Lisa Grant checked her instruments for the 100th time that day. As the expedition's lead scientist, she had spent years preparing for this moment, but nothing could have readied her for the reality of alien contact. Her screen showed energy readings that made no sense and materials that seemed to bend the laws of physics. She turned to Jake and nodded. They were as ready as humans could be. Captain Ryan Foster adjusted his diplomatic uniform and reviewed his notes one final time. He had memorized every protocol Earth's best minds could devise for this historic meeting. The United Earth Government had chosen him to speak for all humanity, and the weight of that responsibility pressed down on his shoulders like a physical force. The alien ship that approached them defied description. It moved without any visible engines, and its hull seemed to shift colors like oil on water. When it docked with the horizon, a section of its wall simply dissolved to create a doorway. The first alien to step through was tall and elegant, with pale blue skin that seemed to glow from within. Its eyes were large and silver, and when it spoke, its voice carried musical tones that made the air itself vibrate. Ambassador Veltar of the Etherean Empire welcomed the humans with what seemed like genuine warmth. Behind the ambassador came other beings that challenged every assumption humans had made about alien life. General Thaxmer of the Cronid military stood over 3 meters tall with thick armor-like skin and 4 arms that ended in claws. The Valkyrie representative appeared to be made of living crystal that rang like bells when it moved. Another delegate floated in a containment field as a cloud of glowing gas that shifted between different colors. The tour of the council station overwhelmed the human delegation. They walked through corridors where gravity pointed in different directions and rooms filled with atmosphere that glowed like liquid starlight. Lieutenant Amy Brooks kept careful watch on everything around them while her tactical training screamed warnings about how vulnerable humans were in this alien environment. She counted dozens of different species moving through the station and noted that many wore what looked like restraints or identification tags. The formal presentation took place in a vast chamber where hundreds of alien beings observed from floating platforms. Ryan stood before the council assembly and delivered humanity's request for membership in their galactic civilization. He spoke of Earth's desire for peace and cooperation among the stars. He described human achievements in science and culture, and offered Earth's resources to benefit all species in the galaxy. The response chilled him. Veltar explained with patient condescension that humanity would be welcomed as a junior member of galactic society. Earth would provide raw materials and labor to more advanced species while humans learned their proper place in the cosmic order. The hierarchy principle governed all council interactions, with newer species serving older and more evolved civilizations without question. Lisa felt sick as she listened to the terms being offered. Humans would be classified as a Class 7 species, which meant they ranked near the bottom of 847 member worlds. Earth's resources would be harvested by other species while humans worked in their mines and factories. Children would be taken for education on other worlds to learn proper galactic values. Any resistance would result in immediate termination of Earth's membership and protective status. Jake watched Amy's face grow darker as each new restriction was announced. Her hand never moved far from her sidearm, and he could see her calculating distances and angles even in this diplomatic setting. The tactical officer had noticed things during their tour that troubled her. Too many species looked defeated rather than prosperous. Too many worlds seemed to exist only to serve others. Too many empty spaces where other species might once have lived. The council representatives spoke of their peaceful expansion across the galaxy and the benefits of joining their advanced civilization. But Amy had seen the weapons emplacements hidden throughout the station and the military vessels that surrounded it. She had counted the guards and noted their positions. Most importantly, she had seen the fear in the eyes of many alien species. When they looked at the council delegates, Ryan completed the formal ceremonies knowing that Earth faced an impossible choice: accept slavery disguised as membership or face the combined might of nearly 1,000 worlds. The council's generosity came with chains attached, and refusal would mean extinction. He smiled and thanked the aliens for their offer while his mind raced through alternatives that might not exist. The journey back to Earth took on the quality of a funeral march. Jake set course for home, knowing they carried news that would change everything. Behind them, the council station continued its slow rotation while alien minds calculated the resources that Earth would provide and the labor that humans would perform. The hierarchy had welcomed another species into its embrace. None of the humans spoke much during the long trip home. They reviewed their recordings and compiled their reports while each privately wondered if they had just signed humanity's death warrant. The stars that had once promised adventure and discovery now seemed cold and hostile. Somewhere behind them, alien fleets were already moving toward Earth to ensure compliance with Council will. Lisa stared out at the void and wondered if humans were truly alone among the stars or if other species had once stood where humanity stood. Now, before choosing between slavery and annihilation, the galaxy was vast and beautiful and apparently ruled by those who saw other thinking beings as nothing more than resources to be harvested. Admiral Kate Sullivan read the intelligence report for the third time that morning, and each reading made the situation look worse. The Galactic Council had given humanity exactly 1 Earth year to accept their terms completely or face what they politely called corrective measures. Satellite feeds from the outer system showed massive alien fleets positioning themselves just beyond the orbit of Pluto like wolves circling a wounded deer. President Collins called an emergency session of the United Earth Assembly within hours of receiving Jake Morrison's full report. Representatives from every nation gathered in the crisis chamber beneath Geneva, while military leaders linked in from bases around the solar system. The weight of making a decision for all humanity pressed down on everyone in the room like a physical force. Dr. Peter Hayes stood before the assembly with charts and graphs that painted a grim picture of council capabilities. His team had analyzed every scrap of data from the diplomatic mission and concluded that humanity faced an enemy beyond their current ability to fight. Council ships could crack moons with their energy weapons and their defensive shields, turn nuclear weapons into harmless light shows. The alien civilization commanded resources from nearly 1,000 worlds while Earth stood alone. Chief Engineer Maria Rodriguez had spent weeks studying the technical data Lisa Grant brought back from the council station. What she found gave her the first hope anyone had felt since the Horizon returned. The alien technology was impressive but inefficient and over-specialized. Council species had apparently grown complacent after millennia of unchallenged dominance. Their systems were powerful but rigid, and their designs showed little innovation or adaptation. She pointed out weaknesses in Council fleet formations and gaps in their defensive strategies. The aliens seemed to expect complete submission from their enemies rather than sustained resistance. Their weapons were designed for orbital bombardment rather than ship-to-ship combat. Most importantly, their command structures appeared to be completely hierarchical with little room for individual initiative or tactical flexibility. General Carl Henderson listened to every briefing with the calm focus of a career military officer. He had fought in 3 different wars and understood that superior technology did not always guarantee victory. The Council might have better weapons, but humans had advantages the aliens could not match. Human military doctrine emphasized adaptability and combined arms tactics, while the Council seemed to prefer overwhelming force, applied in predictable patterns. He began developing strategies to exploit the rigid hierarchical thinking that appeared to dominate Council military operations. Small human forces could potentially achieve objectives far beyond their apparent capabilities if they moved quickly and unpredictably. The key would be avoiding direct confrontation while striking at vulnerable targets the aliens would not expect humans to reach. Jake Morrison volunteered for the most dangerous mission Earth could conceive. He would take a small stealth ship to the galactic rim and attempt to contact species that existed outside Council control. Intelligence suggested that some civilizations had escaped the alien expansion by hiding in remote regions or fleeing to areas the Council considered worthless. These refugees might be willing to aid humanity if they believed Earth could actually resist Council domination. The mission launched in secret while Earth's leaders continued public negotiations with Council representatives. Jake's ship slipped past alien sensor networks using experimental stealth technology that Maria's team had developed by studying Council scanning methods. The journey to the rim would take months and success was far from guaranteed, but humanity needed allies if they hoped to survive the coming war. Amy Brooks worked with teams of engineers to convert civilian ships into potential military vessels. Cargo haulers could carry missile launchers and passenger liners could serve as troop transports if properly modified. The conversion program proceeded under cover of normal commercial activities while the Council monitored Earth from their observation posts. Every human facility now operated under alien surveillance, but the Watchers seemed confident that resistance was impossible. Meanwhile, Ryan Foster conducted careful diplomatic exchanges with Council negotiators who grew increasingly impatient with human delays. He bought time by requesting clarification of terms and proposing minor modifications to the membership agreement. The aliens clearly expected quick capitulation, and their growing frustration suggested they were not accustomed to prolonged negotiations. Every day of delay gave Earth more time to prepare for what seemed like inevitable war. Lisa Grant established secret research facilities to study alien biology and technology captured during the diplomatic mission. Her teams worked around the clock to understand Council physiology and identify potential weaknesses. The aliens had made the mistake of underestimating human scientific capabilities and left behind biological samples and technological fragments that revealed important secrets about their nature. Peter Hayes coordinated with intelligence agencies around the world to gather information about Council activities in human space. The aliens had established monitoring stations throughout the solar system, and their ships regularly scanned Earth's communications and infrastructure. The surveillance was thorough but followed predictable patterns that suggested the Council had never faced organized resistance from a subject species. The breakthrough came when Maria's team successfully reverse-engineered a Council communication device found aboard their diplomatic shuttle. The alien technology revealed that Council species communicated through complex combinations of electromagnetic fields and chemical signals that human equipment could potentially disrupt. More importantly, the communication network appeared to be centralized with little redundancy or backup systems. Kate Sullivan began moving Earth's limited space forces into positions where they could potentially delay Council advances when the ultimatum expired. The strategy relied on making every system and planet too expensive for the aliens to take quickly. Human forces could not win a direct confrontation, but they might be able to impose enough costs to make the Council reconsider their plans for Earth. The final weeks before the ultimatum deadline saw frantic preparations across human space. Civilian populations evacuated from outer colonies while military forces prepared defensive positions around vital installations. The Council watched these activities with apparent amusement as their representatives continued to express confidence that humanity would see reason before choosing certain destruction. President Collins made the final decision in consultation with military leaders and civilian advisors who understood the stakes involved. Earth would reject the Council ultimatum and prepare to fight for human independence regardless of the cost. The announcement went out on all frequencies simultaneously. While human forces moved to their assigned positions, there would be no slavery disguised as membership and no surrender to alien masters who saw thinking beings as nothing more than resources to be exploited. Council reaction was swift and predictable. Ambassador Valtar expressed regret that humans had chosen to resist the natural order of galactic civilization, while General Thaxmer began issuing orders to military commanders throughout the region. The aliens had expected submission and found defiance instead. War would follow within days as massive fleets began moving toward human space with orders to bring Earth into compliance through whatever force proved necessary. The die was cast, and humanity prepared to fight for survival against odds that seemed impossible to overcome. Admiral Zexthal of the Cronid Empire commanded the first pacification fleet with the confidence of someone who had never faced defeat. His massive ships moved through space toward human territory, expecting the usual pattern of quick surrender followed by efficient occupation. The Cronids had performed this operation hundreds of times across the galaxy and saw no reason why humanity should prove different from any other species that had challenged. Council Authority. Captain Steve Murphy watched the alien fleet approach from his position commanding a small flotilla of converted civilian vessels. His ships looked pathetic compared to the massive Council battleships, but appearances could be deceiving. The converted cargo haulers and passenger liners carried experimental weapons designed by Maria Rodriguez and her engineering teams. More importantly, they were crewed by humans who had volunteered to fight despite knowing the odds against survival. The empty quarter strategy unfolded exactly as Earth's military planners had designed. As Council forces advanced into human space, they found system after system stripped bare of anything valuable. Populations had been evacuated months earlier, while infrastructure was systematically demolished to deny its use to alien occupiers. Every installation humanity abandoned became a trap loaded with improvised explosives and automated weapons that activated when alien forces investigated. Zexthal grew increasingly frustrated as his fleet encountered empty worlds and booby-trapped facilities instead of the terrified populations he expected to find. Council doctrine called for making examples of resistant species through spectacular displays of overwhelming force, but the humans had denied him obvious targets. The Admiral found himself bombing empty cities and destroying abandoned mining operations while his true enemies remained hidden. The first major battle occurred at New Perth, where Commander Rebecca Stone led a desperate defense with everything Earth could spare. Her mixed force of military vessels and converted civilian ships used the asteroid belt surrounding the mining world to maximum advantage. Human ships darted between floating rocks while alien vessels struggled to maneuver their massive hulls through the debris field. Lisa Grant had been right about Council overspecialization. Their ships were designed for orbital bombardment and fleet actions in open space rather than the close-quarters fighting that humans forced upon them. Converted human cargo ships could hide behind asteroids and launch missile strikes before disappearing again, while Council vessels found their heavy weapons useless in the cluttered environment, the tactical innovation that shocked alien commanders most was human willingness to ram their ships directly into enemy vessels. Steve Murphy led the first such attack when his damaged freighter penetrated Council shields through pure kinetic energy before detonating its entire missile load inside an alien battlecruiser. The Cronid crew had never encountered an enemy willing to sacrifice themselves for tactical advantage, and their rigid command structure had no protocols for dealing with such desperate tactics. Amy Brooks analyzed alien communication intercepts from her position aboard the command ship and made a discovery that changed everything. Council species relied on electromagnetic fields and chemical signals for coordination, which made their command networks vulnerable to specific types of jamming. Human quantum entanglement communication systems proved nearly impossible for alien forces to intercept or disrupt. The breakthrough came when Ryan Foster led a boarding action against a damaged Council cruiser that had been separated from the main fleet. Human Marines in powered armor employed close-quarters combat tactics that overwhelmed Etherian defenders who had never experienced hand-to-hand fighting. The aliens were physically frail compared to humans, and their weapons were designed for long-range combat rather than the brutal efficiency of human assault rifles and plasma cutters. A captured vessel provided intelligence that revealed Council fleet movements and strategic objectives throughout human space. More importantly, it showed that alien commanders were already reporting unexpected resistance to their superiors, while requesting reinforcements that had been allocated to other sectors. The Council war machine was not as flexible as its propaganda claimed, and unexpected developments caused significant delays in their operational planning. Jake Morrison returned from his mission to the Galactic Rim with news that changed the strategic situation completely. He had made contact with the Dralex refugees and several other species that had escaped Council expansion over the centuries. These civilizations possessed advanced technology and burned with hatred for their former oppressors. More importantly, they were willing to launch diversionary attacks against Council territory if humanity could prove capable of sustained resistance. Admiral Zextel made the mistake that would define his campaign when he ordered the orbital bombardment of Haven Prime as an example to other human worlds. The empty colony world was reduced to radioactive slag in a display meant to terrify Earth into submission. Instead, the genocide only strengthened human resolve while providing propaganda material that rallied every human settlement to fight harder. The destruction of Haven Prime also triggered the first Dralex attacks against Council rear areas as Jake had negotiated. Alien supply convoys began disappearing while isolated Council outposts reported raids by unknown vessels. The Galactic Council suddenly found itself fighting on multiple fronts for the first time in millennia, while their supposedly invincible fleets struggled to defeat a single stubborn species. Rebecca Stone's defense of New Perth became the template for human resistance throughout the war. Small human forces used superior mobility and terrain knowledge to inflict casualties far beyond their apparent capabilities. Council forces could eventually overcome any single human position through sheer firepower, but the cost in time and resources was enormous. Every victory came at a price the aliens had never expected to pay. The psychological impact on Council forces proved as important as the tactical victories humanity achieved. Alien crews began reporting stress and uncertainty as they faced an enemy that refused to follow established patterns of behavior. Cronid warriors who had never questioned their superiority found themselves afraid to board human vessels while Etherian commanders struggled to maintain fleet cohesion against an enemy that seemed to attack from everywhere at once. Maria Rodriguez continued developing new weapons and countermeasures based on captured Council technology. Her phase missiles could penetrate alien shields by briefly existing in subspace, while her quantum jammers disrupted the electromagnetic communication systems that coordinated enemy fleets. Human technology was advancing rapidly under the pressure of war, while Council innovations had stagnated over centuries of unchallenged dominance. President Collins declared total war against the Galactic Council after the destruction of Haven Prime, while Admiral Kate Sullivan began planning Operation Hornet's Nest. The strategy called for coordinated strikes by small human task forces against Council infrastructure across dozens of systems. If humanity was going to fight a war against impossible odds, they would make every alien world pay a price for their aggressive expansion. The first phase of the war ended with both sides shocked by the ferocity of human resistance and the cost of Council aggression. Zextel controlled several human systems, but his fleet was badly damaged and facing attacks from multiple directions. The quick pacification campaign had become a grinding war of attrition that threatened to spread throughout the galaxy as other species watched to see if the mighty Council could be defeated by a single determined opponent. 6 months into the war, the conflict had spread far beyond human space as Jake Morrison's diplomatic mission bore unexpected fruit. The Dralex launched coordinated uprisings across 3 different sectors while Bakhtar refugees emerged from hiding to conduct sabotage operations against Council supply lines. General Thaxmer found his forces fighting on a dozen different fronts as species that had been suppressed for centuries suddenly discovered their courage. Admiral Kate Sullivan implemented Operation Hornet's Nest with ruthless efficiency as small human task forces struck at Council infrastructure throughout alien space. Captain Amy Brooks commanded one of the most successful raids when her flotilla destroyed a massive fuel depot that supplied an entire sector of Council territory. The attack forced alien commanders to disperse their fleets for defensive duties. Instead of concentrating overwhelming force against human positions, the war's character began changing as human innovations proved superior to Council technology in unexpected ways. Maria Rodriguez had developed quantum phase missiles that could penetrate supposedly impenetrable alien shields by existing briefly in subspace before materializing inside enemy vessels. Human fighters piloted by Verins like Jake Morrison proved far more maneuverable than the automated defense drones that Council forces had relied upon for centuries. Rebecca Stone led the first successful human offensive when her combined fleet attacked the industrial world of Kethmar in coordination with Dralek's ground forces. The battle showcased the tactical flexibility that gave humans their greatest advantage over rigid Council doctrine. Human troops demonstrated superior individual initiative while maintaining coordinated battle plans that confused alien commanders, who expected either mindless aggression or total submission. The assault on Kethmar succeeded because human forces could adapt their strategy in real time, while Council defenders followed predetermined protocols that became predictable once humans understood the pattern. Amy Brooks coordinated orbital strikes with ground operations while Rebecca's ships provided close air support for advancing troops. The combined arms approach overwhelmed alien defenses that were designed to counter single types of threats rather than integrated attacks. General Carl Henderson had trained human forces to exploit the hierarchical thinking that dominated Council military operations at every level. When senior alien commanders were killed or captured, their subordinates often became paralyzed waiting for orders from higher authority. Human forces learned to target enemy command structures first in every engagement while maintaining flexible leadership that allowed any officer to take control when circumstances required immediate decisions. Lisa Grant served as intelligence coordinator for the offensive operations and discovered that many Council species were held in line through fear rather than genuine loyalty. The crystalline Valkyrie had been conquered centuries ago and forced to provide technology for Council expansion. The aquatic Murthal served as reluctant administrators while their homeworld remained under military occupation. Even some cronid factions questioned the wisdom of an increasingly expensive war. Steve Murphy led convoy raids that disrupted Council logistics throughout the war zone, while human propaganda broadcasts revealed the true cost of alien imperialism to subject species. The message was simple but effective. The Galactic Council maintained its authority through violence and oppression while claiming to represent galactic civilization. Species that had never questioned the hierarchy began asking why they should sacrifice their resources and populations to maintain alien dominance. The turning point came when Ryan Foster led a desperate boarding action against the Council super battleship Eternal Dominion during the battle for the Vega system. Human Marines fought through corridors designed for species twice their size, while alien crew members struggled to coordinate defense against enemies who seemed to appear from everywhere at once. The capture of the massive vessel provided intelligence on Council strategic planning while demonstrating that no alien ship was safe from human assault. However, the Council responded to increasing pressure with escalation that shocked both humans and their alien allies. Ambassador Valtar convinced the ruling assembly to deploy planet crackers against human colonies as a demonstration of Council resolve. The weapon that destroyed New Damascus split the entire world apart while 2.3 million human colonists died in seconds. The attack was meant to break human morale but instead united every human settlement in determination to fight until the Council was completely destroyed. The genocide at New Damascus triggered the largest refugee crisis in galactic history, as dozens of species realized that Council protection could vanish overnight if their loyalty was questioned. Entire civilizations began preparing evacuation plans while others quietly established contact with human representatives. The hierarchy that had maintained order for millennia started fragmenting under the pressure of a war that neither side could afford to lose. Kate Sullivan authorized the use of captured Council technology to develop weapons specifically designed to counter alien advantages. Human ships began incorporating energy shields and quantum computers that matched or exceeded Council capabilities. More importantly, human engineers improved upon alien designs by adding redundancy and flexibility that made their systems more reliable under combat conditions. Admiral Zexthal found his campaign deteriorating as human resistance grew stronger. While Council reinforcements were diverted to deal with uprisings throughout alien space, the Chronic Commander had never faced an enemy that became more dangerous as the war continued instead of weaker. Every human defeat seemed to generate new tactics, while every Council victory came at increasing cost in ships and personnel. The War's psychological impact began affecting Council populations as casualty reports revealed the true cost of fighting humanity. Species that had never questioned their government's decisions started demanding explanations for why so many resources were being spent to conquer a single primitive world. The Etherian Council faced the first serious political opposition in their recorded history, while Cronid military leaders openly criticized strategic decisions made by civilian authorities. Peter Hayes coordinated intelligence operations that revealed growing dissent within Council ranks as the war continued beyond all original projections. Several minor species had already begun secret negotiations with human representatives, while others prepared to declare independence if the opportunity arose. The galactic order that had seemed permanent for thousands of years was showing cracks that grew wider with each passing month. Maria Rodriguez developed the gravity bombs that would change everything when human forces discovered how to weaponize the quantum fields that Council ships use for faster-than-light travel. The new weapons could create localized gravitational anomalies that crushed alien vessels from the inside while remaining completely undetectable until the moment of detonation. Council fleets suddenly found themselves vulnerable to an enemy they had dismissed as technologically primitive. Jake Morrison returned from another diplomatic mission with confirmation that the Galactic Council was facing rebellions on 17 different fronts while their military struggled to maintain control over territory they had held for centuries. The war against humanity had become the catalyst for galactic revolution as suppressed species realized that their oppressors were not invincible after all. The second phase of the war ended with both sides preparing for final confrontation, while the galaxy itself began choosing sides in a conflict that would determine whether freedom or tyranny would rule among the stars. 1 year into the war, the Galactic Council faced its first existential crisis in millennia, as what began as a simple pacification campaign had become a massive drain on resources that threatened the stability of their entire civilization. General Thaxmer commanded increasingly desperate military operations while alien commanders struggled to adapt to human tactics that evolved faster than Council strategists could counter. Dr. Peter Hayes now served as humanity's chief strategic analyst and had identified the fundamental weakness that would ultimately destroy the Council. Their civilization depended entirely on established hierarchies and rigid protocols that could not function when faced with chaotic human innovation and rapid adaptation. Council command structures were breaking down under pressure from an enemy that refused to follow any predictable pattern of behavior. Captain Steve Murphy led the most audacious operation of the war when his task force launched a direct assault on Nexus Prime itself using captured Council vessels and intelligence provided by Dralek's rebels who had infiltrated the administrative capital. The attack penetrated supposedly impregnable system defenses through careful planning and human willingness to accept casualties that alien commanders would never risk. The battle for Nexus Prime showcased how much human military capabilities had evolved since the war began. Soldiers like Sergeant Lisa Grant, who had joined the military after her homeworld was destroyed, employed powered exoskeletons and neural link targeting systems that gave individual fighters capabilities that matched entire alien squads. Human technology now incorporated the best Council innovations while adding improvements that alien engineers had never considered. Rebecca Stone commanded orbital operations during the assault while her ships provided close support for ground forces advancing through the capital city. The urban fighting revealed another advantage humans possessed over their enemies, as Council forces had never developed tactics for defending their own cities. Alien defensive positions were designed to repel attacks from space rather than the street-by-street fighting that human troops forced upon them. Meanwhile, Amy Brooks led boarding parties that captured Council command vessels during the space battle around Nexus Prime. The operation succeeded because human forces could coordinate multiple simultaneous attacks while alien defenders tried to respond to each threat separately. Council military doctrine had no provision for enemies who could maintain unified command while executing complex multi-vector assaults. Admiral Kate Sullivan's Grand Fleet engaged the Council Home Defense Armada in the climactic battle that would determined the fate of galactic civilization. Captain Ryan Foster commanded the flagship UES Liberty and led the boarding parties that captured the alien admiral's vessel along with the complete strategic database that controlled Council military operations throughout the galaxy. The intelligence treasure trove revealed every weakness in alien defenses, while providing targeting data for follow-up attacks. The fall of Nexus Prime sent shockwaves throughout Council space as species that had served the hierarchy for centuries realized that their masters were not invincible after all. The Velkari declared independence within hours of receiving news about the battle, while the Murthal began evacuating their subject worlds before Council forces could retaliate. Even some Cronid factions questioned whether continuing the war was worth the cost in ships and personnel. Jake Morrison coordinated with rebel forces throughout alien space as the Council's authority began fragmenting under military pressure and political upheaval. The diplomatic network he had established during the early phases of the war now provided coordination between dozens of species that had chosen freedom over continued servitude. The galactic revolution that had begun with human resistance was spreading faster than Council forces could contain. General Carl Henderson established military training programs for alien species that wanted to fight alongside human forces but lacked experience with modern warfare. The Draleks proved to be natural soldiers once they learned human tactics, while the Bakhtar refugees provided intelligence about Council installations they had been forced to construct during their enslavement. Each new ally added capabilities that made the growing coalition more dangerous to their former oppressors. Maria Rodriguez continued developing new weapons systems based on captured alien technology, while her engineering teams worked to mass-produce equipment for the expanding war effort. Human industrial capacity had been mobilized completely for military production while captured. Council facilities were converted to manufacture weapons that would be used against their former owners. The irony was not lost on anyone involved. In the effort, the Council's response to mounting pressure revealed the desperation of leaders who had never faced serious opposition to their authority. Ambassador Veltar advocated for the complete extermination of humanity as a dangerous evolutionary aberration, while other Council members proposed negotiations that would have been unthinkable at the war's beginning. The unified front that had ruled the galaxy for millennia was splintering under pressure that none of them understood how to counter. Steve Murphy's raiders struck at industrial targets throughout Council space, while human propaganda broadcasts encouraged rebellion among oppressed species who had never imagined that resistance was possible. The message was spreading that the mighty Galactic Council could be defeated by determined opponents who refused to accept alien domination. Uprisings erupted on worlds that had been peaceful for centuries as local populations turned against their occupiers. Lisa Grant coordinated intelligence operations that revealed the true extent of Council weakness as their military struggled to maintain control over territory they had conquered through overwhelming force rather than genuine loyalty. Many species had submitted to alien rule only because they believed resistance was hopeless, but human success demonstrated that even the most powerful empire could be brought down by enemies who refused to surrender. The battle for the Andorian sector marked the beginning of the end for Council authority as human forces supported by multiple alien allies launched coordinated attacks that overwhelmed defensive positions that had been considered impregnable for generations. The victory opened a direct route to the core worlds where Council leadership maintained their primary bases while providing proof that no alien position was safe from human assault. Peter Hayes established contact with moderate Council factions who were willing to negotiate an end to the war before their entire civilization collapsed under the pressure of fighting enemies on dozens of different fronts. The negotiations revealed that many alien leaders had never wanted to fight humanity but had been forced into war by extremist factions who believed that any compromise would destroy the hierarchy that gave their lives meaning. Ryan Foster led the diplomatic efforts that convinced several Council species to switch sides or at least declare neutrality in the expanding conflict. The Etherians proved most receptive to human proposals, while some Cronid commanders quietly agreed to avoid attacking human forces if their own positions were not threatened. The Grand Alliance that had ruled the galaxy was dissolving as former allies chose survival over loyalty to a cause that seemed increasingly hopeless. Admiral Kate Sullivan prepared for the final campaign that would either destroy the Council completely or force them to accept terms that guaranteed freedom for all species in the galaxy. The war had grown beyond human survival to become a struggle for the fundamental principles that would govern galactic civilization for generations to come. Victory was within reach, but the cost of achieving it continued to mount as both sides prepared for battles that would determine the future of every thinking being among the stars. The fall of Nexus Prime marked the beginning of the end for the Galactic Council as their authority collapsed under pressure from enemies who had once been dismissed as primitive and weak. The war's end came not through final battle, but through the complete collapse of the Galactic Council as an institution that could command obedience from member species who had discovered that freedom was possible. Human forces continued their advance across alien space while allied species expanded their rebellions until the ancient hierarchy simply dissolved under pressure it had never been designed to withstand. President Collins faced the monumental challenge of building something better than the system humanity had destroyed, while Admiral Kate Sullivan oversaw the establishment of governmental structures based on cooperation rather than domination. The Galactic Federation emerged as a voluntary alliance of species, committed to mutual defense and peaceful development rather than the rigid hierarchy that had oppressed thinking beings for millennia. Commander Jake Morrison led exploration missions to contact species on the galactic rim who had remained hidden from Council expansion for centuries, while many civilizations cautiously emerged from hiding to join the new Federation. The Outer Rim species brought unique technologies and perspectives that enriched galactic civilization while proving that diversity was strength rather than weakness, as the Council had claimed. The former Council species faced different fates as the old order crumbled completely. The warlike Chronids splintered into dozens of nation-states, with some factions joining the Federation while others remained hostile to any form of central authority. Ambassador Veltar led the Etherian reform movement that abandoned supremacist ideology in favor of cooperation with other species while working to rebuild their civilization based on different principles. Dr. Peter Hayes established the Institute for Galactic Relations with headquarters on the neutral world of New Geneva, where representatives from hundreds of species worked to prevent future wars through improved communication and understanding. His research teams discovered that the Council's millennium of so-called peace had actually been built on systematic suppression of natural evolutionary diversity that had stunted galactic development for generations. The Valkyrie crystalline species began developing their own unique governmental systems, free from hierarchical control, while the aquatic Murthal established ocean worlds where their civilization could flourish without interference from other species. Each former council member found their own path toward freedom while contributing to the broader galactic community. Through voluntary cooperation rather than forced submission, Captain Amy Brooks commanded the exploration vessel UES New Horizon. As humanity continued expanding into regions of space that had been forbidden to council species for mysterious reasons, her discovery of ancient ruins that predated the Galactic Council by millions of years suggested that the galaxy had supported advanced civilizations long before the current inhabitants had developed. Space travel. General Carl Henderson worked with military leaders from dozens of species to establish defense protocols that could protect Federation worlds without recreating the oppressive structures that had characterized Council rule. The new military doctrine emphasized local defense supported by voluntary mutual aid rather than the massive fleets that had enforced alien domination throughout known space. Steve Murphy established trading networks that connected Federation worlds through economic cooperation that benefited all participants rather than the extraction system that had funneled resources toward Council core worlds. The free exchange of goods and services created prosperity that spread throughout the galaxy while proving that cooperation produced better results than coercion. Maria Rodriguez led technological development programs that combined the best innovations from dozens of species while encouraging continued research that had been suppressed under Council rule. Human adaptability merged with alien knowledge to produce advances that neither could have achieved alone, while establishing principles of shared development that prevented any single species from dominating others through technological superiority. Rebecca Stone commanded the Federation's rapid response fleets that dealt with the remnants of Council loyalist forces who refused to accept the new galactic order. Some alien commanders continued fighting hopeless campaigns while others turned to piracy or terrorism in attempts to restore the hierarchy that had given their lives meaning. These threats required constant vigilance but posed no serious challenge to Federation security. Lisa Grant worked with xenobiologists from multiple species to catalog the incredible diversity of life that Council expansion had nearly destroyed through forced conformity and standardization. Her teams discovered species that had been thought extinct while documenting biological treasures that had survived only because they remained hidden from alien authorities, who saw variation as a threat to be eliminated. Ryan Foster served as Earth's first ambassador to the Galactic Federation, while working to establish diplomatic protocols that respected the unique needs and perspectives of hundreds of different species. The challenges were enormous, but the alternative was a return to the oppression that had characterized galactic civilization for far too long. The Federation's greatest test came when long-range sensors detected signs of another galactic civilization beyond the local group that might pose threats similar to the fallen Council. Jake Morrison led the first contact mission that would determine whether humanity and their allies could maintain peace with neighbors who might have different ideas about how the galaxy should be governed. Children of multiple species played together in the gardens of New Geneva, while their parents worked to build institutions that would preserve freedom for future generations. The site gave hope to everyone who remembered the fear and oppression that had characterized life under Council rule, while proving that cooperation between different species was not only possible but beneficial for all involved. Admiral Jake Morrison retired from active service to work as an ambassador between the Federation and independent species who preferred to remain neutral in galactic affairs. His experiences during the war had taught him that peace required constant effort and vigilance, while the price of freedom was eternal struggle against those who would impose their will on others. The story concluded 5 years after the wars, and as Captain Amy Brooks investigated ancient ruins that suggested the galaxy had supported multiple advanced civilizations over millions of years. Each had risen to dominance before eventually falling to forces that the current inhabitants might face in the future. The discovery reinforced the lesson that no civilization was permanent, and that freedom required constant defense against entropy and oppression. Commander Morrison watched children of dozens of species learning together in Federation schools while reflecting that the war's true victory had not been the destruction of the Council but the creation of something better in its place. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders that could only be appreciated by beings who were free to choose their own destiny among the stars. The final scene showed Federation explorers preparing for their next mission to regions of space that remained unmapped, while carrying with them the knowledge that diversity was strength and cooperation was superior to domination. Humanity had entered galactic civilization through war but had emerged with allies who shared their commitment to freedom and their determination to build a better future for all thinking beings in the universe.